Why hello, it's Teresa at Teresa's Crafty Cabana. I wanted to know if I could use spray stains on my gel plate. So first I wanted to do a coat of something. I wanted a clear coat, so I used my Mod Podge. I went ahead and put one layer down, let it dry completely, put a second layer down, and let that dry completely. Then I used these two Distress Mica spray stains. One is Fortune Teller Purple and one is Yuletide Red. And these do have some sparkle in them. They're, I guess, a shimmer spray. And after I brayered those out while they were still wet, I put a piece of watercolor cardstock down. It's actually a 90-pound watercolor paper from Artist Loft, and that's from Michaels. I didn't leave it on for a long time. This is real time here. I just pulled my top piece of paper off, pressed into the corners, and then pulled my print away. And you can see it did not pull up everything. I've got these little flaps from the Mod Podge that are kind of, I could press them down, but a lot of it was left on the plate. So I decided to see what would happen if I just did another layer of the spray stains over the top. Just using that same piece of watercolor paper, I just pressed down. And again, I didn't let it dry, I just kind of pressed it down for a little bit and then just pulled it right up. I'm still not getting the center to be removed. I did get a little bit more up, so I decided it was probably because I wasn't getting enough of the liquid in that center area. So I focused on my sprays on the center part and pressed that in, and then this time I actually did leave it for probably about 10 minutes, and then I came back to it later and removed this print, and all the rest of it pretty much came off. The edges of it didn't, but the center of it did, and it looks pretty neat with the layers there. So to do kind of like a test of how well this does, a spray stain does on a gel plate without any treatment to it, I went ahead and just sprayed the two colors down again, ombre'd them out, and then removed the print, and you can see it just looks kind of splotchy. I decided to try a second layer, the same colors. I just wanted to see if I could get a more smooth tone. It's still a little bit splotchy, but there are darker colors now together, but you can see the difference from using the Mod Podge versus just spraying it on the gel plate. I decided to use some water, a little spritzer, and just make the whole background wet. And then I put on a fan and kind of walked away and let it dry completely. And this is what it looked like when I returned. So for my next one, I wanted to see if I could put some of this Mod Podge with a stencil and use my spray stains in this way. So I used this stencil from PM Artist Studio, the Dream Big Poetic Script font, and then I used these two spray stains. There's a bubblegum pink and the unraveled, and this I did a little ombre from pink in the top, and it's kind of a goldish color on the bottom, and they go together really. These are really nice colors together. I was trying to get some background colors that are more on the Valentine's Day color scheme, just because that's coming up next, and then I could have some backgrounds to work with. I'm using the same kind of paper here. Again, that's just that watercolor paper. And this one removed all the way because I did let it dry. So it has some of the flakes on the edges where that Mod Podge is kind of coming up, but for the most part, this whole print came up with my pull, and it looks very beautiful, and you can see some nice details there. So for my next one, I'm using this Tim Holtz Crest stencil, and I'm going to try to see if I can get a similar result with a much smaller design. So this stencil has very small areas to the design, and I am trying to press in, and I'm just wanting to get that transfer of the Mod Podge there onto the gel plate. And then I just removed that stencil, and there is some of the design left. I'm using a pink and sort of a jade colored spray stain this time, and these are both shimmer sprays as well. The jade is kind of like a turquoise, so it's very beautiful, and then the pink and jade mixed together, they make a nice purple color. I let that dry for a few minutes and then removed it, and you can see where some of that design is. It didn't have a lot of the design transfer up. It did take up color throughout, so I sprayed this one as well and just kind of let those colors bleed together and blend them in the middle there. So I thought that looked pretty nice with a very subtle design. So anywhere that the Mod Podge is, you can see that it creates this darker tone of those colors, and it just makes it so those colors are a lot more vibrant than just using them directly on the gel plate. One last test I wanted to do, I wanted to see if I could remove some of the design with a paper embossed stencil type thing. So I removed it, let it dry, and then I came in with these 3 colors, just blended those out. So one of the things I did notice as I was doing this technique is you don't want to brayer it out for too long, because you see at the bottom there I was brayering it a little too much and it starts to remove the design. So the less you brayer away, the better the design is at staying on the plate. So here are the prints that I was able to create with this technique, and I think these are really fun backgrounds and really great background starters for a card. So I did decide to pick out 2 of these prints to turn into a card. If you're interested in that, just stick around. So the 2 that I liked were the really bright colored ombre purple to pink, and then the blue, the turquoisey blue color with the pink. I'm going to use a couple of die cuts and stamps and just create a little Valentine's Day card. This is just like a Polaroid die cuts that I have, and I'm using some gold cardstock to cut that away. I'm going to cut a piece of my gel print, and I didn't want to use the entire Polaroid background, so I found a square die cut that fit inside the frame, and I picked the area that I wanted to die cut out, but I will save that other piece because I'll use some of the other parts. This is going to be the little Polaroid frame background. I just created an A2 size card out of Nina White cardstock, 110 pound. I cut down my purple and pink gel print to 4 inches by 5 1/4 because the background is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and that makes a nice frame. To put a design on the inside of this little Polaroid piece, I'm going to use my Eiffel Tower, and I'll just use some of my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. That's my favorite black ink to work with. It is nice and dark, and I can use a couple of layers when I use my stamping platform here. This helps me line it up nicely. It did need a second coat, most likely because it's the watercolor paper and that does have some texture to it. So for this next stamp, I used this Color Box White Frost ink. I guess it's a pigment ink, and I couldn't really see it the first time, so I did another round, and I still couldn't really see the design. So I decided to go in with my Onyx Black ink, and I kind of went around the edges with the black, and I didn't do it all over. And I was able to transfer that image, and it looks really nice, and it's a subtle version of the black. It looks more like a gray. I liked the gray, so I actually just took my watering can archival ink and I used that to add a little bit of text to the background. It's just a scripty text stamp. And then for my purple and pink jelly print here, I wanted to add a little bit of a design on this one. So I have this as Hero Arts, a background stamp with some hearts. And I'll use that same gray archival ink watering can. And I'll just press those hearts in just to give a little bit of interest to this gel print. And that created a nice subtle texture or design to this background piece. For the blue area of my other gel print, I did cut out the words "Love You." And that's going to go on the outside of my Polaroid. I also cut down some of that blue, turquoisey blue color to create a piece that I'm going to put on the inside. I'm actually using these funky scissors to create a little bit of fringe, and then I've got some of the leftover purple and pink gel print, and I'm going to use that to kind of make just a little fringe piece to add some interest on the inside and bring some color in there. I just glued the purple and pink part to the blue fringe, and then I'll glue that later on once it dries onto the inside of the card. I put some foam tape on the back of the Polaroid, then I added my Eiffel Tower background piece, added some glue to the back of that, and then removed the rest of the foam tape, and that's how I will adhere it to the center of this really pretty jelly print. And then I'll glue that whole thing to my card base. Here's that fringe piece that I did cut it down so that it has a little bit of a border. Just I wanted to make sure that the card would close without getting stuck on that. And then I can kind of flip up the little fringe pieces and it will still close flat nicely, especially to fit into an envelope. And so this is my completed card with the inside and the outside. And I hope you enjoyed watching this process. I had a lot of fun creating those jelly prints. Also, it was a nice experiment to see that I can actually use my spray stains and get an actual design out of them. A lot of times with spray stains, you are limited because the spray kind of goes all over the place. So I thought that this was a nice way to be able to control what the spray stain design is. And I think I would use this again in the future. Would you use this technique? What would you make with your backgrounds? Would you make cards or something else? Well, thanks for watching and being here, and I will see you in the next video. Happy crafting, y'all.